Hello everyone, welcome to my messy studio and my channel. My name is Mark, and I'm an artist and a fountain pen fanatic, and in this episode, I'm going to try to appeal to both types of people that watch my channel. Those of you that are here for my fountain pen recommendations, and those of you that are here for my many tutorials on how to draw with pen and ink. So, my plan is to show you these three Fude nib fountain pens that I've been enjoying lately, pens that I think would be very useful additions to your own drawing arsenal. And then I'm going to show you three techniques that you can use with your Fude nib fountain pen. Let's get started. For those of you that are new to this channel who are wondering what in the world is a Fude nib is a nib that is bent like this, that allows you to change line width based on angle, so that a vertical angle produces a very fine line, with thicker lines being produced as you lower the angle. But that's not all. Most Fude pens will also produce an extra fine line when used in reverse. The incredible range of lines that can be produced with a Fude nib make them fantastically useful and fun to draw with. If this is all new to you, I have a number of introductory videos on the subject you can check out that will get you familiarized with this ridiculously versatile drawing tool. But for those of you that are already initiated in the mysteries of the Fude, here are the pens I'm going to show you. The first is the Hongdian Black Forest. Then this very odd bird, the Moonman Q1, a pen that has some very interesting advantages with a Fude nib. And this one. This is the Duke 600, which I'm going to tell you already is my favorite of the three. The Hongdian Black Forest is a pen I've already reviewed, but with an extra fine nib. Given its excellent performance with a regular nib, I was very curious to try it with a Fude. That's because it wrote very wet, something I find rare in Chinese pens, making this an ideal candidate for a Fude nib. As described in detail in a previous review, this pen features a sturdy, all-brass body with a snap-on cap. The grip section is nice and long and comfortable, though a touch slick, making you wish that the decorative knurling on the barrel was extended all the way down to the grip section. The pen posts securely, but very shallowly, making it way too long and back-heavy for extended use. Overall, a well-designed pen body with only one small drawback, this little step up from the grip section to the barrel, which is a little bit sharp. But considering that this pen costs under $20, the build quality is terrific, and the pen's slender body makes this an ideal candidate for a compact sketching kit. But the best thing about this pen is the Fude nib, which works brilliantly, and not just because the feed provides plenty of ink flow. Fude nibs are generally far less finicky than flexible nibs, and I have yet to come upon one that works poorly. But I do find that Fude nibs with a bend of about 45 degrees ideal. Nibs with a shallower bend force your hand into an uncomfortable position when trying to get a wider line, while nibs with a steeper bend force you to hold the pen at near vertical angles, which is also not ideal. This Fude nib on the Hongdian has that perfect 45-degree angle, making both thin and thick lines comfortable to produce. Another thing that I like very much is that the bend on this nib is more curved and gradual, also making line width easier to control. Let's do some tests with this pen. Since Fude nibs work very differently than normal nibs, I devised a few simple tests specifically designed for the Fude. The first is line variation, which tests the range of line width. It looks like the finest line I can get is an extra fine. As for maximum width, we have about 1.5 millimeter, nothing terribly impressive. The nib on the Hongdian is fairly small, I believe a number 5, so the range here is not super, like it is on some of my larger pens, such as this pen with a custom-made Fude crafted from a steel number 6 Yovo nib. Sadly, the Hongdian doesn't work in reverse, which in many Fude nibs will give you an even finer line. However, I don't think you'll need anything finer than the line produced with a vertical angle, so perhaps reverse writing here isn't all that necessary. The next test is for line control. As I mentioned, I find that Fude nibs with a more curved bend are easier to get line variation with, allowing you to add line thickness gradually. When the bend is too sharp, then the pen will go from thick to thin very quickly, making it hard to get the exact line thickness you're looking for. In this test, the Hongdian, with its gently curved bend, performed extremely well. And the last test is for wetness. Fude nibs have a distinct advantage over flex pens in that they don't require special feeds to work well. Having a generous feed, however, is a plus, since it allows you to put down very fast strokes without the lines breaking and to easily fill in large areas. In this test, the Hongdian, with its unusually generous feed, performed exceptionally well. That ideal 45-degree angle and curved bend, combined with a generous feed, make this pen very pleasant and easy to use. And this, combined with a durable, comfortable pen body, make the Hongdian Black Forest one of the very best Fude pens you can get for any price. This oddity is the Moonman Q1. This pen has been making the rounds of the pen reviewers on YouTube, mostly for its bizarre proportions. The design is based on Japanese pens such as the Tombow Zoom, a pen that looks like it's being distorted in a funhouse mirror. Supposedly, the purpose of this design was to make it more comfortable to use for people with arthritis or other hand ailments. While I'm fortunately unqualified to say whether this is true or not, I can say with confidence that with a normal nib, this pen will provide no benefit to the average user and could, with extra girthy grip section, become uncomfortable with prolonged writing. However, with a Fude nib, its weird shape actually confers some advantages. In a normal pen body, such as this one, you have to hold the pen with greater and greater angles to get line thickness, and to achieve this angle, sometimes you have to hold the pen way back here. The problem is that the farther back you are, the less control you have over smaller movements. Furthermore, I find that over time, holding a pen at this extreme unnatural angle can lead to wrist strain. However, the unusual stubbiness of this pen allows you to hold it like this. This grip allows you to shift the angle of the pen without moving your fingers back, but by tucking the back of the pen into the palm of your hand at different angles. So you can hold it this way, or really flat against the paper like this. Again, the advantage here is that because your fingers are always near the grip section, you have greater control over your pen. It's an unusual grip to be sure, but one that many artists are already familiar with, since we're often called to handle short materials such as charcoal sticks or soft pastels. Regular Moonman nibs are usually very dry, even compared to other Chinese counterparts. But as a Fude, for some reason, this pen actually writes very wet, providing excellent ink flow even at speed. Furthermore, this pen is an eyedrop filler, giving you excellent ink capacity despite its shortness, making it very easy to clean. Let's quickly run this pen through my 3 proprietary tests. In line variation, it puts down a juicy fine to medium line when held vertically, and at its widest, something approximating 1.5 millimeter, a pretty decent range, slightly larger than the Hongdian. It's also capable of putting down an extra fine line in reverse writing, which it does smoothly. In terms of line control, it performed quite well, as good as the Hongdian, but because of the ability to hold it at a variety of angles, as demonstrated, I'm going to give it an even better rating. As far as wetness goes, it's exceptional, perhaps even better than the Hongdian. This might have to do with the fact that it's an eyedropper, since they tend to have better flow than cartridge converters like the Hongdian. By the way, so far I haven't had any burping issues with this pen, something that is common to eyedroppers. I'm not sure why that is, but perhaps it has something to do with the thickness of the plastic, which prevents transmission of heat to the ink reservoir. And since I made a rather bold claim to this pen body being especially good for the Fude nib, here is a brief demo of me drawing with it and using those unorthodox grips. It really is comfortable to hold the pen in this way, particularly when you need to put down a thick line. It also seems to help maintain a consistency of line width even at speed, something not easy to do with a normal grip. For those of you unused to holding stubby materials, such as pastels, Conte sticks, etc., this might seem like a clunky and unnatural way to hold your pen, but just give it time. You'll find yourself getting used to it quickly, and I'm confident you'll see the benefits. This pen also has its share of drawbacks, mostly minor. For one, it doesn't fit into most pen cases, despite being a stubby pocket pen. And then there's also an uncomfortable step up from the grip section to the barrel that your fingers will inevitably catch against. And while the pen posts securely, giving it adequate length, again, the grip section is too wide and unwieldy to ever be comfortable for using with a normal grip. However, with a touch of practice, I think you'll find holding the pen the way I demonstrated to be a comfortable way of working, making the purchase of this chubby, weird-looking pen completely worth it. Here is the last pen I'd like to show you. This is the Duke 600, and it's a pen with a rather unique feature in that it has an overfeed, which provides extra ink to the nib. This is something that I like very much in another Duke pen that I bought several years ago, the Duke 699, a ridiculous monster of a Fude pen that not only has an overfeed, but also has 3 tines. This is a pen that's super fun to use because of the huge line variation you can get with it and its wonderfully wet ink flow, but the pen's super heavy body made it hard to carry around and also made it rather unwieldy. When I stumbled upon the Duke 699 and saw that it had an overfeed, I was overwhelmed with the hope that this pen would have all the wonderfully wet attributes of the Duke 699, but in a more smaller, manageable format. Well, I'm happy to report that this pen fulfilled my hopes and dreams, that it works as well as the 699, but also has the added benefit of near-perfect ergonomics. Before we talk about the pen, I'd like to give a shout out and props to my friend and fellow YouTuber Jonathan Wienburg, who discovered this pen before I did and sang its praises as his favorite Fude pen in a recent video. Jonathan is a prominent artist and an art historian whose YouTube channel features thoughtful fountain pen reviews, also from an artist's perspective. His channel is criminally underviewed, so if you enjoy my videos, go check out his, because you'll definitely enjoy them as well. Though I somehow missed his video on this pen and managed to stumble it on my own, it's nice to know that Jonathan and I are in such alignment in our pen opinions. Okay, let's talk about the pen body. This is an all-metal pen with very good build quality and a slightly odd-looking design that I do find somewhat unattractive. The cap snaps open, revealing a slendering, tapering grip section that I find very comfortable, and even though it has some texture on it, a little bit slick. If not for that slickness, however, the ergonomics on this pen would be near perfect, with a very nice weight and balance. I really like pens that post well, and this pen has one of the best posts of any pen that I've ever used. The taper on the back of the pen allows the cap to post very deeply, adding only 1/4 of an inch of length to the pen, and despite the weight, not off-balancing it in the slightest. This kind of carefully designed post is very impressive, making it equally comfortable to use posted and unposted. I believe this pen only comes as a Fude, but given its superb fit and finish, this pen body would also be ideal with a regular nib. But now let's get to the fun part, which is the nib. Not only is it super smooth, with that ideal 45-degree curved bend that I liked so much in the Hongdian, but this overfeed ensures that it always has plenty of ink at hand, allowing you to use it very quickly without drying out and roughness that you often see in other Fude pens. Let's do our 3 tests. As far as line variation, it can put down a very thin extra extra or even extra fine line without problems. And at its widest, something pushing slightly past 1.5 mm, a terrific range of line variation, the best out of the 3 I've shown you. And in reverse, it can put down an even finer line. In terms of line control, the nib also performed well, but perhaps slightly worse than the previous 2 because the bend in the nib is a touch more abrupt. It's still quite good, however, and nothing to complain about, giving you the ability to quickly transition from thick and thin lines. I'll rate the performance here as very good. In the wetness test is where this pen really shines, however. That overfeed does wonders, and the flow on this pen refuses to quit even at tremendous speeds. Look at it go. The performance is the best I've seen, absolutely perfect. Now that I've shown you 3 excellent Fude pens, let me show you 3 interesting techniques you can do with them. The first is not really a technique, but a method of holding your pen that has some unique advantages. One thing I learned early on in my artistic training is that there are actually a number of ways you can hold drawing materials. The conventional grip, also called the writer's grip, is very good for small details, fine hatching, and of course for creating line variation when using a flex pen. But many artists also hold their drawing implements like this, a grip called the thumb and forefinger grip. Here's how it works. I pinch the grip section with my index finger and my thumb, allowing the back of the pen to rest in the middle of my palm, and then wrap my other 3 fingers around it. This grip has a number of advantages over the writer's grip in that it engages the shoulder, allowing you to draw smoother, longer curves, improving your line quality, and making it easier to draw in larger formats. The only limitation is that it's not very good on flat surfaces and requires that your drawing pad be at least at a 45-degree angle. While this grip is useless with a regular nib, it works brilliantly with a Fude, giving you more expressive line quality and the ability to work larger. I really love doing gesture drawings with it and fast expressive sketches. Those of you that have taken life drawing classes might already be accustomed to this grip and will have no trouble using it with the Fude. However, if you've never tried it, it might be wildly uncomfortable at first and you might feel like you have less control. Just give it time and you'll find that your control improves. That said, because it engages the entire arm, it's not as good for smaller details, so I find myself switching over to the writer's grip for small stuff, fingers, toes, facial features. All in all, this is a really fun, expressive way to draw, and I recommend you try it. The only caveat, and it's an important one, is that you're essentially holding this pen upside down, so it won't work with some pens, and I find that using this grip with eye drop fillers will make them run dry. To my mind, that's not a deal breaker, however, since you can just tilt the pen downwards once in a while to re-establish the flow. The word Fude is derived from the Japanese word for calligraphy brush, which makes sense since the nib replicates many of the effects you can get with a brush. One thing I found, however, is that most people use their Fude nibs for line work, neglecting its full mark-making potential. The fact is, the Fude's brush-like ability to put down large flat areas of value lets you literally paint with it. Here is a Pen BBS 355 pen filled with slightly diluted Lexington gray that I've been using to add washes to my ink drawings like this. While obviously you can use a brush pen for this purpose, a Fude in many ways gives you even better control. Lexington Gray, by the way, is one of my all-time favorite inks for drawing because of its transparency and water resistance. This allows you to layer the values and gradually build up contrast, and one way I really enjoy taking advantage of this property is to take a few Fude pens and fill them with different dilutions of ink. In this figure drawing, I'm starting off with a dilution of half ink and half water, which I use to put in my initial line work and then to block in the shadows. One thing I really like about the Fude pen is that though they can be used like a regular pen, and also can be used like a brush, it's really neither and has a unique character of its own. This is why when I put down values, I emphasize the direction of the stroke and make it uneven. This gives the drawing a slight roughness and energy that I really enjoy. While I usually use precise hatching when I draw, I also like letting go a little, and in a strange way, the Fude gives me permission to behave badly and to be a little sloppier and more relaxed. Which brings me to one of the reasons I love Fude nibs so much. They allow you to control your sloppiness. I'm not sure if this makes sense, but the Fude allows me to control exactly how sloppy I want to be. Whether I want to make a scratchy line that looks manic and crazed, or one that is smooth, elegant, and calligraphic, the Fude allows me to do it with perfect precision. The Fude is the control freak's way to be sloppy. That said, you can also use this same technique to work much more carefully. In this drawing, I'm using Fude pens with several dilutions of ink to do cross-hatching. In one of my previous videos, I did a comparison between the two kinds of pens that can be used to create line variation, the Flex pen and the Fude, and talk about the pros and cons of each in detail. While there are things that the Flex pen can do which the Fude cannot, and of course vice versa, I find that for most drawing purposes, the Fude is actually preferable, giving you equal or better control over line variation without many of the problems that come with using a Flex pen. Here is the last technique I'm going to show you, one that takes advantage of the fact that the Fude can work on a large variety of different kinds of papers, including paper that is rough in texture, like this cold press watercolor paper. While regular pens might catch and even splatter on a bumpy surface, the Fude, when used at a low angle, will slide across it and put down something akin to dry brushing. And the great thing about using a Fude pen for this, that you can get greater control over this effect than you can with a brush, giving you the ability to create something that looks very rough and expressive, but with tremendous control. While this is something I demonstrated in a video where I use a Fude to draw landscape, this method can be used in many other applications, such as for head drawing. Here's a portrait using a Fude filled with Noodler's black. What was surprising when I first tried this technique, and it's something that surprises me even now, is how, despite the roughness of the paper and the high contrast of the ink, how subtle the effect can be, almost looking like you're not using ink at all, but some kind of China marker. This is another example of the way a Fude really has no equal when it comes to the ways it can be used. It might feel foreign and uncomfortable at first, but it's very easy to get used to, and once you do, you'll find that the Fude's potential to draw in so many different ways makes it an absolutely essential drawing tool. I hope you found this tutorial on Fude technique and my reviews of these 3 Fude pens fun and useful. Though it feels like the popularity of Fude nibs is growing, I still think many artists are either unaware of them entirely or are reluctant to try them. It's strange really, but you would think that artists are free thinkers and love trying new things. But the reality is that we as a whole are actually notoriously conservative when it comes to materials, either being purists and rejecting anything that wasn't used in the 16th century, or completely in love with whatever materials we happen to have stumbled upon in art school. That's a shame, since Fude nibs open up many new ways of working that can push your work in all kinds of exciting directions. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more art instruction and pen reviews, and bye for now.